Welcome to the mix. I'm ABD. Today we're going to try out a new plugin from Neural DSP, Rabea, made with the artist known as Rabea. We have a cheap Firefly Flying V guitar to play, and I just thought we could run down some of the different settings and presets and amps and cool features that we have in this plugin. But I'm also recording the audio DI from the guitar into Ableton, so you can hear exactly how the plugin sounds. So we'll switch probably back and forth between those two different types of audio. But when you open the application for the first time, you're greeted with the very first amp, which is a mini amp with a bunch of cogs on it. It's pretty fucking rad looking. We have this tuned to drop D, so it's going to be a little heavier. But it's a clean. This is meant for clean. So let's lower the volume a little bit. And that amp sounds like this. Right. Turn on another light. That was a little bit of the clean. We can do a little more clean. Change to the bridge pickup. That was some tones from the clean amp. Now we've moved on to the higher gain amp there. This very pretty white and gold, like satin draped amp here. I think a lot of this art looks like Elden Ring. I don't know if they were working on it before Elden Ring came out though. Or they might not want to say that if it is, for copyright reasons or whatever. But it's very fantasy looking, very From Software looking. Anyways, this is the next amp, and here's how it sounds just by default. That's with the Flying V. Let's try it with a Jazzmaster. I know that Rabea designed this, a lot of it around a Strat, because a lot of the presets are Strat this and Strat that. And I have a Strat, but let's try it with a Jazzmaster instead. So we're on the Crunch amp, and we have a Jazzmaster now. Grab a pick. Let's go. So you can tell that definitely this Crunch amp, a lot of this plugin, but this Crunch amp definitely designed around to sound the best with single coil pickups, or Strat pickups, or Tele pickups. That was all in the neck position of this 40th anniversary Seafoam Green Jazzmaster. But I'm going to put it on the bridge, and it'll be even more spanky. Spanky! we go back and try the clean app, shall we? Would she still remember me? Would she still remember times like these? To think of us again, and I do. Now it's not really exactly what you would probably use the high gain amp for, but let's try it with the Jazzmaster and see how that sounds. So I have the high gain amp on now, the lead amp, and there's a ton of noise, so let's turn it up and see how it sounds. That was a little bit with the Jazzmaster, but on a high gain amp like that, you probably might be using humbuckers. So let's switch back to the Flying V and see how that sounds. See how Flying V? See how this sounds with the ultra high gain amp. Metal. Can you feel the metal? So, as we can see from the high gain amp, you really get a great sound out of a humbucker. With the crunch amp, you really get a great sound out of a Strat. And with the clean, you kind of, it's both, depends on what you're looking for. But next we could talk a little bit about I'm going to have a little cut, and we'll come back and I'll talk about some of the pedals and other effects that come with the suite. So I'm back. We have the Flying V and we have the high gain amp, and we can go through some more tones here. Alright, I wanted to go through some of the pedals and effects and other features of this plugin. So we're going to go back to the clean amp first, and then we'll try out the pedals. So if we take a look at our pedals here, we have a pretty cool design with this like brushed kind of metal gray and this gold with these symbols. These kind of like Led Zeppelin, Lord of the Rings-esque symbols, or like I said before, some Elden Ring type stuff. And there's a twin blade dual compressor. There's the Chaos Bed Octaver. This is pretty cool. We have the Colossus Fuzz, and then the Paragon Overdrive. Let's tune this guy up first. Here's a good look at what the built-in tuner looks like. It does a pretty good job. Visually it looks good. Alright. So here's an A. And let's see what happens if we turn on the compressor. Sounds pretty good. We're going to skip over the octave right now. Let's go to the fuzz. So that really brings a lot of overdrive, a lot of power to it. If we go to the vintage, it's more like a germanium fuzz. If we go to the overdrive, it's more of a standard overdrive, not so dirty. On the modern one. See if we have the overdrive and the compressor on. What do we get? And let's throw in the fuzz. Remember, that was a vintage fuzz, so let's go back to the modern fuzz. And now maybe for my favorite pedal, just this one, the Chaos Bed Octaver. If you don't know what an octaver is, it does just that. It adds usually an octave above or below or both your input, your dry tone. So we turn it on. So now we have an octave above and below. I'm actually going to put the overdrive on too. So as you can see, it adds a whole bunch of bass underneath it. It's almost like you have a bass player underneath. And then it adds another octave above to give it even more of a super thick, in-your-face sound. But that's all with the clean amp. I'm going to leave this same stuff on, and I'm going to go to the crunch amp. Background is different. Our amp is different here. And another thing that we haven't really messed around with is the doubler. And what a doubler does is it uses stereo imaging, a widening effect, usually the Haas effect, to delay the left and the right output just slightly. And so what that does is it creates a wideness effect stereo image. And a lot of the time people will record a guitar once and pan it all the way to the left, and then record the same thing and pan it all the way to the right. In this case, it's kind of like doing that all at once. And so there's a little switch to turn it on, and then we have the spread, which the more you increase this, well, the farther apart the guitars feel, and the more input latency it adds. So it adds about, by default, it's about 25% spread, and that adds about 6 milliseconds of input latency, which is not that bad once you start adding more effects and maybe other plugins in your signal chain, or you're working on a mix on the drums and the bass and everything. Then it might create more issues for you if you try to go back in and change some guitar or add some guitar later. But if you're just playing around for fun in either the standalone application or the plugin, you can mess around with that and really not feel much latency whatsoever at 6 milliseconds. But once you start turning that up to 10, 15, and so on, then you're going to start to feel a latency from when you play to when it plays back out of your speakers. So we have the doubler on now. Let's just play the same thing. Now I'll leave all these same effects on and go to the high gain amp again. Right? So I'm going to go back to the clean amp, and I'm going to use this other little gadget right here, this transpose, which can transpose the pitch of your instrument up or down, which can make it higher or lower in pitch. And so I'm going to bring this up all the way, see what it sounds like. Now let's try transposing that all the way down. A couple of the other things to show right next to it is a gate. If you know what a gate is it's an effect. It can be a pedal, and in this case, it's built into the interface at the top. And a gate is kind of stops the quieter parts of the guitar. It gets rid of a lot of the hiss and the feedback, and sometimes the scratchiness of when you're sliding back and forth. Depends on how much of a gate you want, what you're trying to do, how high gain your amp might be, where your sound might be. And so you can have a threshold where basically anything that's quieter than a certain point you set will not be picked up. So when you're playing in really high gain situations for metal or stuff like that, you might want to use a gate. So when you stop playing, or move around the fretboard, or again, just to remove a ton of that whine or hiss or feedback that you're getting from your guitar or your amp, you can turn that gate up or down. So if I'm just gonna go to the higher gain amp and watch what happens when I turn up this gate. You can see it starts to remove some of that quieter stuff, and when I'm not playing guitar at all, you can hear this feedback. And in this case, I can remove it And I can even remove some of the quieter sounds the actual strings are making if I go even higher. So that's that. There's also this icon here is the cabinet sim. So we have our amp on top of our cabinet and our speakers, and these are microphones, and you can pick and choose what microphone you want, where you might want them, on the amp or on the speaker. And in this case we have a dynamic 57 and a ribbon 121. They're both a little off axis, and you have position, distance, mic level, room level, and the same thing for the other mic. Position, distance, mic level, pan here is grayed out, room level. You can reverse the polarity of the microphones, and you can turn microphones off. So in this case, if we turn off the ribbon microphone, so first with, now I'm going to turn this microphone off. Definitely loses a lot of the low end and some of the mids and a lot of the characters. Turn it back on. And let's turn off the 57. So you can just tell the difference there. The ribbon mic is getting a lot more of the low end. The dynamic 57 is getting a lot more of the high end, and a little maybe more punchy mids. But together they make a really thick, satisfying sound with this cabinet. And then you can even unlink this right here as a link icon, because usually the amp goes with a certain cabinet, and in this case I could change the cabinet and use the cabinet that's usually meant for the lead with the crunch amp. See how that sounds. So that's pretty cool. Let's try it with the first cabinet. It's like a beat up cabinet. So you can see how much of a difference that makes. In this case, there's a different microphone we're using here, a condenser 414, and it makes a really big difference in the tone. Let's try the clean cabinet with the lead amp. And so there's a ton of possibilities. As you can see, well, I'm going to go here to the, I like this amp a lot, and I like this cabinet a lot. So I'm going to leave it here. You can change your input level and your output level here. If your guitar input might be too quiet or it might be too loud going out, whatever it might be. If you go to the next icon, we have an EQ, a really pretty one in this case. There's a switch to turn it on or turn it off, and it has a low mid, a high mid, and a high, so there's a 4-band EQ, and you can choose your frequencies here, and you can choose how much you want to add or remove here. And there's already one kind of set up for us, so let's try it out. Let's play it with before. Now let's turn this on. And that really did make a difference. There's some more high end and some high mids. Remove some of the low mids, add some low. So there's a little bit of a scoop in the low mids, but and a boost in the highs, and I think it sounds good. Very cool, very cool. And then lastly, I mean, there is one more thing we'll go over, but lastly, as far as this chain of effects here, we have the delay and the reverb. Most people know what those are, how they work. You have a ton of control over your delay, sync, pre-post, what kind of delay time, what kind of mode, and crossfeed, icicles, time. I don't really know what icicles means. Let's turn that all the way up, see what happens. Icicles is like a shimmer sort of thing that's happening. It's pretty cool. It's a little different than a normal shimmer. It's like a delay shimmer thing, kind of, sort of. And here, finally, you have your reverb, your mix, your decay, a high cut, a low cut, volume, pitch. So it's pretty cool, but you can pitch your reverb up or down. So in this case, our reverb will be 12 cents higher than our actual guitar tone. If we turn the mix up, you could hear it better. So you also get a better idea of the reverb when you really crank it up. It's a really good sounding reverb, I think. So the last thing I want to look at is the synthesizer that's included, the Overlord synth. So all you have to do is press and hold, double click this up here, turn it on, and you're immediately getting some cool synth sounds. And so you have a number of settings to change. We have pre and post, which tells it where the signal chain to be. Right now it's in post. I'm going to change it to pre. So now it's giving it that synth sound before it's being overdriven and octaved and all of these things. I'm going to go back to these effects and I'm going to turn off the octaver. I'm going to come back. Really cool, weird stuff that you can do with that. Let's try messing around with it. We have mix, so let's bring the mix to like 40. So now we have the dry tone of the guitar mixed with the synth. Input sensitivity, let's turn it all the way up. That's how sensitive it is at triggering it if we turn it all the way down. Not a huge difference. I'm sure if you're playing softly or a little harder or whatnot, it might make a difference. You have a gate similar to the gate that we have for the actual input tone of the guitar. We have a gate just for the synth. We have an output if we want to kind of push the output of the synth maybe more than our tone of the guitar that we have from our amp. And here we have our arpeggiator, and let's turn this on. Here's where the fun stuff comes in. And I'm going to leave the root at A, and I'm going to play stuff in A minor. And let's say this is the arpeggiator pattern, and we have up, down, up and down and up, and random. It's on random right now, but I'm going to change it to up and down. Let's do this. And it's pretty cool, man. You have your octaves, how many octaves you want it to use, and change that to 2. And we have our root, how many notes. I'm going to change that to 7. And sync, I'm going to leave it on. Rate 116, all this good stuff. Then you have your oscillator 1, your oscillator 2, your unisons. I'm going to add the semitones all the way up to 24. I'm going to leave the unisons at 5, the semitones at 19. Then we have a filter. I'm going to turn up the resonance on the filter. And then we have our cutoff here. I'm going to leave that alone. Let's see what we've changed. So maybe 2 octaves might be too much. Let's leave that. And I'm gonna get rid of 3 and 7 and leave the 8 on. For the semitones for the oscillator, I'm gonna bring that back down to negative 24. Try going back to the clean amp and the cabinet that goes along with it. That's weird and a lot of fun. Well, that's super creative. There's a lot of stuff you can do with that. I also feel like it's not super perfect. I feel like it might need some work, maybe. Synthesizing and arpeggiating and all of that good stuff. Oscillating a guitar tone through a plugin. But it's pretty good. You could do some really weird shit. Some weird, noise, rock, sort of fucking Primus weird shit you can do with that. But, how often do you think of making a guitar into a synth? Maybe now it'll become more commonplace. Maybe now we'll see more plugins offer such a thing. But pretty cool stuff. I'm going to try one of the presets. This one's called Stodgy Bass Synth. It's one of Rabea's presets. And it's not a bass guitar, but let's see how it sounds. So that's a lot of fun. There's some, like I said, there's a little bit of weirdness there. There's some spitting and there's a little bit of noise that you might not want, but it's very, very cool, very, very creative, and a lot of cool stuff you could do with this plugin. Maybe, in my opinion, the best sounding neural DSP plugin. I've tried a number of them. I have Gojira, I have Nali, I have tried a number of the other ones. And this one's really cool with the synth effects, all the pedals, the EQ, which sounds great, and then the delay and the reverb. The reverb sounds really good. One of the better reverbs, I think, from Neural DSP. And I'm just a big fan of Rabea in general. If you haven't watched any of his videos, you can check him out. He'll be in the description. He also appears on Anderton's Guitar Shop. That'll be in the description as well. So, that was Archetype Rabea. from Neural DSP. I hope you found that interesting. A quick walkthrough of the effects and the sounds that you might be able to get using this amp. These amps, if you are interested in the plugin, you can get a 2-week free trial, 14 days from Neural DSP. I'm using the trial myself, but I'm definitely, I think, going to pick it up and add it to the collection of other Neural DSP plugins I have. And so thanks for watching. Have a good one.